My name is Brad Davenport. I'm the Vice President of Technical Architecture for Logicalis US. We are a global gold Cisco partner, one of very few in the world, and I lead all of our architectures around security, enterprise networking, and collaboration. We've been selling and deploying and using Identity Services Engine for close to 10 years now. When Identity Services Engine became the de facto migration path from ACS, Access Control Server, we were very early adopters in getting that product into our labs and into hands of our customers for proofs of concept, proofs of value, and enterprise pilots. Identity Services Engine for us has an incredible number of use cases, predominantly around identity and context sharing within the enterprise for endpoint onboarding, for obviously authentication and authorization. Most recently, in the last few years, we've actually finally added device authentication and device management into that with the TACACS implementation. And so now we have a full comprehensive set of features to perform enterprise NAC, pure radius authentication, and user authorization. For us and our clients, the most valuable features of Identity Services are really around the rich context sharing that ISE gives you. The ability to categorically list all the endpoints in the infrastructure, understand where they are, how they made it onto the wire, whether that was through wireless, through a wired engagement, and all of the self-service features that allow you to manage guest access to wired and wireless infrastructure are an incredible number of use cases that our clients are constantly deploying now. Cisco Identity Services Engine has provided two incredibly beneficial outcomes for our clients. First and foremost, they've been able to limit and minimize the number of different discrete platforms they need to use to deliver things such as network admission control, device authorization and posturing, as well as do device and policy enforcement at the endpoint level. The second one that really kind of gets undersung is the ability to manage comprehensively guest and BYOD wireless access. The ability for the enterprise pretty much out of the box to deploy an end-to-end solution to manage guest onboarding, user self-service, as well as bring your own device has been a real boon to network access. Using ISE to detect and remediate threats is really the hinge pin for pretty much everything in the Cisco security infrastructure. Without identity and without context, you really can't do any enforcement. It's fine to be able to detect a threat with an IPS, with a threat appliance, with anomaly detection, but being able to use things like radius change of authorization to then blacklist a host or remove a host from a production VLAN is an incredibly important outcome, not the least of which because that's all automated in ISE. And that's an incredible benefit to IT teams who perhaps don't have a NOC, don't have a SOC that can run out and respond to a threat immediately. Having those SOAR automation capabilities inherent to the system is a really powerful feature set. I think it's inevitable when a customer is deploying or using ISE that they're going to find additional cycles that they can spend their time on. The rich automation and the quick startup out of the box, for instance, ISE has a really rich onboarding wizard pretty much out of the box. You go through a series of steps, input your IP addressing, your domain names, and etc. You don't have to do a lot of the upfront planning and design work that was available in or that was required of previous systems that did network admission control, certainly more so than the old NAC. And so I believe that many customers will find they have extra cycles to go and use that IT talent to do more impactful projects than spending months and months and months deploying admission control. Identity Services Engine has done a great advantage to our clients in the fact that Cisco has begun to move more capabilities into the platform over time. As they started out with the basic AAA capability, authentication, authorization, and accounting that was present in ACS and the older service architecture, they've now begun to move in, as I mentioned, device administration in the form of the TACACS server and other capabilities within ISE. When they previously introduced the PX Grid capability, you now have the ability to bring other enterprise platforms such as your IPS, your threat systems, your DNS security platforms directly into ISE for performing all of those automations. And so it absolutely has consolidated the number of platforms that you need to deploy to achieve that secure outcome. The effect that the consolidation of all of these functionalities within Identity Services Engine has had on IT is that now you have a single platform with which to maintain. I think sometimes we overlook the fact that security platforms themselves have a life cycle associated with them. We have to patch these systems, we have to maintain currency on the devices, and over time, those devices, like anything else, become a little long in the tooth and require refreshing. The flexibility to deploy Identity Services Engine in multiple persona types on hardware or in a virtual machine is a huge advantage to customers who want to consolidate the number of vendors and hardware platforms that they have to support and manage. Identity Services Engine has helped a lot of our clients, as well as Logicalis, simplify the way that we approach compliance, governance, and risk consulting within our own enterprise. Being able to have a single source of context for when devices were on the network, when they were last authenticated, and of course that rich user context that we get, we can now share contextual information from Identity Services Engine within an Azure environment, within an AWS environment, with our own Active Directory. And that's an enormous advantage when you're not only threat hunting, but when you're trying to pass those checks and balances that are required for cybersecurity insurance or your own internal compliance auditing. I think in any technology infrastructure, you're going to have environments where improvements could occur. I think some areas where ISE could be better are perhaps in the number of integrations that they offer from a virtual standpoint, as well as having a better and more comprehensive pathway for the customer to go from physical environment to virtual. Many of our clients today are hybrid. They have a physical footprint in a data center somewhere, as well as a public cloud instance for things. There really isn't today an elegant pathway if for a client that wants to go 100% cloud, and that's an improvement I think that can be made along the way. Identity Services Engine compares favorably with many of the other competitors' products that are in that space. I won't mention them now, but I think we know that all of the same industry competitors have been delivering identity solutions and NAC solutions over the last decade or so. Cisco continues to rank in the upper and farther to the right quadrant in Gartner Magic Quadrant for those identity solutions, and I think they'll continue on that trajectory. Cisco has long been the #1 network vendor in the world, and I think you'll continue to see that growth as the network continues to be important to business. In terms of the licensing and the pricing structure of Cisco Identity Services Engine, there's been a huge advantage to our clients recently with the advent of the enterprise agreement. You now have an enterprise agreement choice, which now allows you to buy as few as 2 security products to unlock additional discounting and additional lifecycle advantages when you consume that solution for a security business outcome. At Logicalis, we deliver a full lifecycle approach to Identity Services Engine when embedded into a Cisco Security Enterprise Agreement. We're able to deliver not only the onboarding and the design guidance that the customer needs to deliver that secure business outcome, but also provide the ancillary services to support all of the other infrastructure that often comes along with deploying a solution like ISE. It's difficult to say whether the clients have seen an immediate ROI with the deployment of Identity Services Engine. Oftentimes you have to take on additional technologies in the ISE product family in order to receive that comprehensive benefit. So I think only time will tell what the true ROI is. I can tell you that the value exchange that occurs between a partner and a client when we're talking about everything within the Cisco security portfolio being fully integrated together and working comprehensively has been an enormous advantage to customers who today have a complex stack of multi-vendor products. Being able to consolidate on a platform-based solution is an incredibly powerful story to tell. It's also incredibly powerful from a cost-benefit standpoint as well. The deployment experience with ISE in the early stages was without a doubt very daunting. There is a huge number of things that you need to understand about the existing infrastructure, about the existing customer environment to properly deploy that solution. As time has gone on, however, the designers and the developers of that software have begun to create wizards, have begun to create additional upfront deployment tactics within the tool itself so that essentially a journeyman network engineer or security architect can deploy the minimum level of functionality right out of the box. Cisco's support for Identity Services Engine has been world-class. The guts of ISE are still Radius server. They're still AAA based functionality. So many folks that have been deploying and supporting Cisco Secure ACS server, as well as the AttackX server and all of the things that have come along with that, continue to use the same skill set to support and deploy ISE. Really, the differences nowadays in terms of support are bringing about more comprehensive offering to support the systems that surround ISE. As I mentioned before, many things plug into ISE and provide much richer context, and really that's where the complexity tends to creep in. Our support from Cisco, both as an end user and a partner, has been beyond reproach, and we really appreciate Cisco's continued investment in the TAC and in all the areas they bring to bear to help you receive that business outcome you're after. Cisco's support is always going to be ranked a strong 9 with me, mainly because we know there's always room to improve things. We don't want to give a full passing score, but without a doubt, I don't know how anyone could consume and deploy business outcomes with Cisco technologies without leveraging support, and Cisco leads the way and continues to invest in that area. The stability of the Cisco Identity Services Engine has continued to improve over time as the product has matured. Anytime you're dealing with something like a database-based product that has millions or hundreds of thousands of endpoints and entries in it, inevitably you're going to have performance creep over time. Because of the scale of the Cisco purpose-built UCS appliances, the SNS appliances that predominantly run Identity Services Engine, we've seen an enormous performance advantages by staying up to date on the most current Cisco SNS appliances. We've also seen an enormous advantage by leveraging ISE in a hybrid capacity. So the ability to deploy PSNs on a hybrid cloud environment, on a public cloud environment, as either additional capacity or as a failover point for that on-premise install base is a really nice advantage to have. So some of the beauty of Identity Services is the fact that there's really no environment too small. If you have 500 to 1,000, maybe up to 2,000 endpoints, we're talking laptops, mobile devices, access point switches, etc. You're really not too small to deploy Identity Services Engine. The beauty of the multi-persona design of Identity Services Engine is that you can leverage that capability to split off those PSN personas, which is actually the persona within Identity Services Engine that processes all of that high rate of radius authorization and authentication traffic. So the scalability of ISE is really well thought out. It was really well thought out from the get-go. You can also split off the admin personas and the monitoring and logging personas as well to give you that horizontal scale. I'm not sure today what the exact endpoint count that ISE scales to, but certainly into the hundreds of thousands of endpoints. I rate Cisco Identity Services Engine as a 10 on a scale of 1 to 10. It's a necessary solution to deploy in order to achieve many of the business outcomes, such as some of the smart business architectures, certainly anything within the automated campus designs that are out there with DNA Center. It's just an incredibly powerful tool to manage both identity and endpoints within the infrastructure, and it really does become the hub of a hub and spoke comprehensive security architecture.